you'll see on the campus here that there's a lot of dying maple trees or declining maple trees with a lot of dead branches like this. And I think also just drought in past years. We've got a fairly sandy soil around here. It's kind of landscape. We've had some dry seasons, and that can be pretty hard on these maples as well. So even if we find evidence of diseases and insects in these trees, so often it's these environmental conditions and site issues that are the cause of the problem. And walking around campus, you can see a lot of maples that look like this for all those reasons. So for the landowner, sometimes they want to know a insect they can spray for, disease or something, and really the best thing they can do if it's not too far gone is watering during those droughts, doing a little better job with the mulching, avoiding injury, avoiding digging near the tree that would be cutting roots. And that's really what they need to do. There's nothing that they can spray, of course, that would solve the problem. So.
I also usually get a lot of questions about, like, oh, is it nutrients? I'll put more fertilizer on it. It's like, no, it's because you whacked it with a weed whacker.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see some nutrient issues here too, but I think you're exactly right. Yeah. Red maple is very sensitive to manganese deficiency, and it's not that there isn't enough in the soil, it's that the pH of the soil gets too high. Sometimes people apply lime, which helps the grass grow, but makes it so that red maple can't take up the manganese. And or sometimes just the soil pH is high to begin with. We see a number of red maples with the same issue right in this area, so there must be a higher pH. You have a very similar issue with oaks, especially pin oak, some of the other red oaks to a certain extent. And it's the same symptom, but it's caused by iron deficiency, again just because the pH is too high. So how to prevent this or manage it, you probably wouldn't want to just leave the trees in this condition without treating it, because over time they're going to start to die back and develop other issues. It's a source of tree stress. So the long-term solution is probably to have the soil tested and then apply sulfur to lower the pH based on the soil test. Ornamental crab apples have a disease called apple scab. And we've actually had a fairly dry growing season this year, so we probably don't have as much infection up here where it's been dry as we might have in other years. But when you have a wet growing season, you get a lot of infection. With the apple scab, it's kind of a diffuse margined lesion on the leaves, and then you can see there are quite a few leaves that have fallen off because of the infection. And so in a wetter year, these trees might be pretty well defoliated before the end of the summer. You can see it's getting a little slim even this year with these trees. So when that happens over multiple years, it can start to weaken those trees, and you start to get dieback and other issues. You've got one down a little bit further where maybe half or more of the tree has completely died, and that could be related to this. There could be some other fungal diseases that got in there too. But you notice this one here has a lot less infection. There's a lot of variability between varieties, and some varieties are quite resistant to apple scab. So a lot of times you might recommend to a person that, rather than trying to spray this every year, is to plant a more resistant variety. But those would be your main two options. A lot of these fungal diseases of the leaves tend to be worse towards the interior and the lower branches, a little less so around the edges where the leaves dry out more quickly when it rains, less humidity, more sun. So sometimes just pruning and thinning it out a little bit can help also. So we've got a linden tree here. It's a little hard to see when you're underneath it, but it actually does have a dead top. Typically be more than a cosmetic issue most of the time. So you can prune these little ones off, but if you left them, I don't think it'd make much difference in infection levels in the future. Any reasons why this particular tree might have a dead top? Yeah, it's got what we call tree girdling roots. So a lot of times when the trees are planted, if they're planted too deep or they had a pretty dense root ball with the roots kind of twisted around when it was planted, roots can end up growing up and over the main roots going into the ground, and eventually as those grow, they constrict and can cause the tree to decline. And there's also a big swollen area here. There's a bacterial disease called crown gall that sometimes trees can get. Doesn't kill them outright, but another source of stress. It's possible that that's what's going on there. Don't know. Of course, we've got a fairly new sidewalk right here and a lot of pavement, so could have been some root disturbance when that was put in that would also contribute to this. There's a fungal disease that we see often in the spring is when the infection occurs, called anthracnose. It's common on a lot of our shade trees. Sometimes when it's on ash trees, the leaves will actually drop from the trees. Sycamores do that a lot. The oaks, they tend to hang on to their leaves, but they get kind of cupped and puckered, a lot of dieback on them. There's also a disease called burl blight that is common in the upper Midwest, further west of Michigan, common in Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. We haven't confirmed it in Michigan, but particularly in southern Michigan, there could be some concern about burl blight. And with that, you might see some similar symptoms, maybe dead shoots at the end of branches. It might tend to be a little bit more throughout the canopy, but that's just something to be aware of. People might have a question about it, or it might be something that we see at some point. That is typically more aggressive and can cause those trees to decline after a period of years, whereas the anthracnose, generally not that serious an issue even when it gets up in the canopy. But here we just have it on the lower branches, which is often what you'll see with these fungal diseases of the leaves, where the upper leaves dry out more quickly, get more sun, less infection up there than we have down here lower. So just kind of a pattern that helps to tell you that you probably have a foliar disease going on there. The decay, or we've got really narrow crotch angles where the branches come off, and sometimes you get included bark and a weak attachment there, and those can tend to break off in a windstorm. So just some things to think about there. I mean, the canopy of this tree still looks pretty healthy and vigorous, so depending on where it's located and just being aware of the decay, maybe they want to leave it there if it's not in a real hazardous location. They're all kind of looking crummy. That tells you that it's probably not a single disease or insect issue. We're probably looking at something with the site or environmental that's gone on. And a lot of these trees are very upright without a lot of branches coming out. And if you looked around more closely, you'd see there's actually some very low-cut stumps out in there. There's probably a lot more trees here, and they may have died. Our guess is that there's something about the site that's a little bit of a depression. Maybe it's gotten too wet at times. There's been some digging perhaps, or something going on with the site that has stressed these trees and caused the problem. But you get that a lot from homeowners too, and when you have a bunch of different species and they're all looking kind of bad, that kind of clues you in that it's probably a site issue as opposed to a disease or insect.
Alright, so before we go in, I just wanted to point one more thing out. Anybody can tell me what happened here?
Hey, Steve!
Emerald ash borer came in, wiped out this ash tree. If you want to go up and take a closer look, you find those galleries underneath the bark. You might be able to find some D-shaped exit holes. There's woodpecker damage up and down it. And you also have one over here that they removed the tree. They had some sprouting come back up. Maybe they used some herbicides or something, killed the first round of sprouts, and now they got more sprouts coming up. So this is very common for ash trees. They sprout pretty regularly, and you'll see it all the time when you're dealing with emerald ash borer. Okay. But, anything else you want to talk about before we?
I think we probably need to head back. We have to fill out the bubble sheets and stuff. I think we'll get back just in time to do that.
Perfect.
Head that way now.
And we won't if we drag
There's
our
other
feet.
stuff we could look at.